Hello. If you were looking for a scare tonight, you've come to the right place. I'll be narrating an hour's worth of creepy horror stories that I found off of Reddit. So without further ado,
These are their stories.
Growing up, Christmas was magical. The tree glowing softly in the corner, the smell of gingerbread wafting through the house, and the laughter of my family made it feel like nothing could ever go wrong. But there was one tradition that always felt off. Every Christmas Eve, just before bed, my parents would gather us around the fireplace. They'd turn off all the lights except for the glow of the fire and hand each of us a small bell. "Shake it once for Santa," Dad would say with a smile. "He needs to hear you." So we did. We'd each shake our bells in unison, filling the room with soft jingling, and then my parents would blow out the fire. And that was it. When I was young, I never thought twice about it, but as I got older, I started to notice strange things. The next morning, the fire would always be relit, even though no one got up to do it. There were faint charred handprints on the bricks surrounding the fireplace. One year, when I was about 12, I asked my mom why we did it. Her face turned pale. "It's just tradition," she said, brushing me off. But that answer wasn't enough. Last Christmas, I decided to stay up. I was 16 and too curious for my own good. My parents and little brother had gone to bed, the house was silent, and the fire had been snuffed out. I sat in the dark, the faint scent of smoke lingering in the air, waiting. At first, nothing happened. I almost gave up and went to bed. Then I heard it, a faint jingling, like someone shaking a bell far off in the distance. I froze. The sound grew louder, closer, until it was coming from the chimney itself. I held my breath, staring at the dark opening, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. Something moved. I didn't see it at first, but I felt it. The cold draft that followed as a tall, gaunt figure emerged from the chimney. Its limbs were unnaturally long, its head bent to fit under the low ceiling. Its skin was ashen, flaking, with dark burns trailing up its arms, and it was holding a bell. It raised the bell slowly and shook it once, the sound sharp and clear in the silent room. I couldn't move. Its head turned toward me, hollow eyes boring into mine. A jagged smile spread across its face as it whispered in a voice that sounded like crackling fire, "You're not supposed to watch." The room went black. I woke up in my bed the next morning, trembling, my clothes reeking of smoke. My parents acted like nothing had happened, but when I went downstairs, I saw a fresh set of charred handprints on the fireplace and a bell sitting on the mantle. I haven't shaken a bell since, but every Christmas Eve I hear it, and every year it gets louder. I'm a med student. I was just meant to observe, maybe assist. Nothing in our textbooks or training prepares you for this. I'm writing this from my locked bedroom as something he moves around my house like an animal, only quieter, more intentional, please. Someone tell me what to do. I don't know how long the door will hold. It started 3 weeks ago. I'd only just begun my first rotation, internal medicine. I was shadowing my supervising doctor at St. Thomas's. He was sharp, old school, always wore a bow tie and never seemed rattled. I looked up to him, still do. The man didn't blink during a code blue, but he'd always said, "It's the quiet ones you watch closely, not the screamers, the ones who smile when they shouldn't." I didn't get it at the time. My first solo case, just a basic consult, but my supervising doctor let me take the lead, was a man listed as patient 46B, mid-30s. Slight build, no emergency, no urgent flags, just unexplained bruising. He sat calmly in the consult room, no obvious injuries, pale, thin lips, brown hair that hung limp like it had given up, but his eyes, that was the first thing. They were gray, not blue-gray or hazel gray, just gray, unsettlingly blank like a fogged-over mirror. He spoke slowly, politely, his voice low and toneless. Said the bruises started appearing 3 months ago. Inner thighs, upper arms, spine, places you'd expect with abuse or bleeding disorder. I examined him, and yes, there were bruises, but they were wrong. The edges weren't purple or yellowing like healing ones. They were pitch black with a red core, as if something inside was trying to get out. I remember asking if he was on any blood thinners. He said no. I asked about substance use, alcohol, anticoagulants. "Never touched a drop," he replied with a smile that felt like someone else's mouth wearing his face. I was unsettled, but I had to write something down, so I chalked it up as possible immune thrombocytopenia, gave him a mild corticosteroid prescription, and told him to return return in a week. We'll run more tests, I said. Probably nothing to worry about. I regret those words. When he returned a week later, things escalated. He looked thinner. Same dark clothes, same blank expression. But there were more bruises. His neck now around his jawline and several across his scalp like blotches of ink. He didn't sit this time. He stood in the corner of the consult room, facing the wall like he was in timeout. Lucas, I asked. That was the only name he'd given. You okay? I can hear them now, he whispered, in the walls. They want out, but they like you. I glanced at the mirror, wondering if this was some elaborate psych eval trick, but it was just me, alone, with him. He finally turned. His pupils were dilated, almost consuming the irises, and there was blood under his fingernails. I don't scratch, he said, as if reading my mind. They move around inside me, I'm not doing it. I referred him to our liaison psychiatrist. I also requested a follow-up with internal. Something didn't add up, physically or mentally. We'll get you seen again soon, I told him. Just hang in there, okay? He nodded. You should lock your doors more, especially after dark. You're warm. They'd like to wear you. The next day, I visited the psychiatrist's office to check in on the referral. The secretary looked up, confused at first, then her expression shifted, something quieter, tinged with sadness. He hasn't come in. You haven't heard? Heard what? She hesitated. He was found dead last night, bludgeoned, in his office. Police think it happened after hours. We're closed today for... I was already walking away, ears buzzing. I didn't want to believe it was connected, couldn't be, but I felt it in my gut. I called the station, asked to speak with the detective in charge. I got bounced around until someone finally took me semi-seriously. Yes, the voice on the other end said, we're looking for a patient, mid-30s, gave the name Lucas, used a fake address on the intake form, no ID. We're advising all staff at St. Thomas's to stay alert and avoid contact. The detective lowered his voice. We found things in Dr. P's office, blood in places it shouldn't be, symbols carved into the carpet beneath his chair, and something under his fingernails, not human. That was 12 hours ago. I've been trying to act normal since. I finished my shift early, told the nurse I had a migraine, took the tram home looking over my shoulder the whole time, and now this. I came home and the house was dark. I live alone in a 2-story terrace. Usually it feels cozy, not tonight. I locked the door, flicked the hallway light on. He was there, not standing, on the ceiling, pressed against it like a spider, barefoot, clothes torn, skin too pale, almost translucent now. The bruises had overtaken his limbs, crawling up his face in broken, inky veins. But it was his expression that paralyzed me, a smile so wide it stretched unnaturally as if his cheeks were tearing from the force of it. His eyes, they were solid black now, not just the irises, all of them, like 2 obsidian marbles reflecting my horror back at me. He didn't speak, he just moved, not like a person. His limbs twisted at angles no joint should allow, slow and jerky like a puppet handled by someone who's never seen one before. He crept across the ceiling, toward me. I wanted to scream but couldn't. My throat locked up, I stumbled backward, hands shaking, keys falling to the floor. He dropped. No sound, just thud, right in front of the door, blocking it, standing there now, head tilted, arms hanging limp, still smiling. I ran, bolted up the stairs, locked myself in the bedroom. I've barricaded it with a chair and a shelf. I don't know if it'll matter. He hasn't spoken once, but he's knocking now. Not on the door, on the walls, knock, knock, knock. Then silence. Then knocking from the other side of the room. I swear to God I heard him giggling. I called the police. They said they dispatched someone, but there's been a surge of emergencies. Said it'll take 30 minutes minimum. I tried to explain that a patient might have killed a psychiatrist and is now in my house. They said, try to stay calm, sir. Maybe step outside. I can't. He's everywhere. The lights keep flickering. My phone battery's at 9%. I can hear him moving in the ceiling above me now. Sometimes dragging something, sometimes whispering my name over and over, doctor. Shh. There's a scratching coming from inside the closet. I didn't check it. I didn't think to wait. Oh God. The closet door just creaked open. It's pitch black in there, but I can see something moving. Long limbs, that smile. He was never downstairs. He's been in here the whole time. Please, someone tell me what to do. I'm posting this in case I don't make it. The cops are 20 minutes away now. My bedroom door just creaked. Update. Noises have stopped. No knocking, no whispering, just silence. I think he's waiting. If you read this, please share it. And if a patient with gray eyes, blood under his nails and bruises that don't heal ever walks into your clinic, run. I never thought I'd be writing this, but I feel like I need to tell someone what's happened. Jake and I had been together for 3 years when we started talking about getting engaged. We both loved antiques, items with history and stories embedded in them. Every weekend we'd hunt together through antique shops and estate sales, searching for all sorts of forgotten treasures. That's how we found the ring. The perfect ring. At least that's how it felt then. It sat in a locked case at Madame Eloise's shop downtown. A deep blue sapphire set in an intricate gold band with delicate filigree. Art Deco. Unique. Perfect. I knew it immediately. Jake, ever the romantic, insisted on buying it then and there. He shooed me from the store, promising to make it special. 2 weeks later, on a warm evening, he led me to our favorite park bench beneath the willow tree we always loved. He knelt, eyes bright with excitement, and presented a small velvet box. I knew what was inside before he even opened it, but when my eyes finally fell on the ring itself, my heart stuttered and I seemed to forget everything I knew. My mind went blank. "Where did you get this?" I asked, fingers hovering over the gold band. Jake grinned. "You know where?" And I did know, of course. My brain was just temporarily mush, I guess. It was the ring from Madame Eloise's shop, but inside the band something new gleamed under the lamplight. An engraving, LM and JC. I ran my thumb over the initials, Lucy M and Jake C. Jake shrugged. It was already there, fate, right? The night air seemed to press around us. Something cold curled in my stomach. "What are the odds?" I whispered. "I'm not a statistician," Jake laughed, "but I think it was meant to be." We drank champagne under the willow, and I fell asleep that night with the ring on my finger, feeling like the luckiest woman alive. Then the nightmares started. I dreamed of a bride in a blood-spattered church sobbing behind her veil. When she turned to face me, her face was bruised and tear-streaked. I woke gasping for air, my chest feeling like it was about to explode. "Bad dream?" Jake mumbled, pulling me closer. "Just nerves," I lied, glancing at the sapphire gleaming in the darkness. The next morning things got so much worse. My neighbor waved as I collected the mail. The sapphire caught the sunlight, flashing blue for just a second. 5 minutes later, her brakes failed as she backed out of her driveway. Her car plowed into an oncoming delivery truck. I watched paramedics pull her mangled body from the wreckage. I tried to convince myself it was a horrible coincidence, 1 in a billion or something, but then my boss dropped dead during a meeting later that afternoon, just moments after complimenting my ring. An aneurysm, they said. I saw how his eyes fixed on the sapphire right before blood trickled from his ears. Deep down, I knew I had been cursed by the ring I loved so much. I had become a walking omen of death. On my way home that night, still in shock, I witnessed a man glance at me, then climb up to the ledge of my apartment building and jump without hesitation. The thud his body made when it hit the pavement will haunt me forever. His dead eyes found mine in the crowd. I clutched my hand to my chest, and the sapphire felt warm against my skin. Too warm. When I looked down, I noticed a faint burn mark on my skin. Around midnight, I decided it was time to remove the ring, but my finger had swollen. The band wouldn't budge at all. No amount of soap, ice, or oil could loosen it. As the days continued, so did the deaths. A barista touched my hand while returning change. Minutes later, he choked to death on a scone as I waited for my cold brew. An elderly woman who admired my ring at the grocery store was crushed beneath collapsing shelves moments later. At dinner with friends, I kept my hands hidden under the table, but Melissa insisted on seeing the ring. The moment the sapphire caught the light, a waiter carrying Cherry's Jubilee tripped. The dessert's high-proof alcohol splashed across nearby tables, igniting instantly. The entire restaurant went up in flames. In the chaos, I watched Melissa's hair ignite, her screams swallowed by the roaring inferno. Only Jake and I walked out unscathed. After 8 deaths in a week, I was desperate. I started keeping my left hand hidden whenever I was out in public, stuffing it deep into my pants or coat pockets. I also began Googling the ring online. It was such a luxurious and unique ring, I was curious if it had a history. It didn't take long to find the original owners, Lydia M. and James C. L. M. and JC, just like our initials. The newspaper article from 1952 was brief but chilling. Local bride found slain on wedding night. The accompanying photos showed Lydia wearing my ring, and she looked just like the woman in my dreams. Something else disturbed me too. Jake had changed. His once warm brown eyes now seemed glassy and unfamiliar. Sometimes I'd catch him staring at the ring with an expression I didn't recognize. Possessive, hungry, hungry. When I mentioned the deaths, he'd shrug them off as coincidences. When I suggested we research the ring's history together, he changed the subject. I began to research alone, visiting libraries and local historical societies. I found more articles about Lydia and James. They'd been high school sweethearts. James had given Lydia the sapphire ring as a symbol of his undying love, a family heirloom passed down through generations. But on their wedding night, something had gone terribly wrong. The police found Lydia's body in their honeymoon suite, strangled. James was nowhere to be found. For weeks, the papers speculated about his whereabouts. Had he killed his bride and fled? Had they both been victims of a robbery gone wrong? 6 months later, James's body washed up on a riverbank 50 miles downstream from the bridge where his car had been found abandoned. His death was ruled a suicide. In my search, I discovered an old woman who claimed to be Lydia's cousin. She lived in a nursing home on the outskirts of town. When I visited her, she recognized the ring immediately. "You need to get rid of it," she whispered, her papery hand clutching mine. It was cursed by James's great-grandmother, a woman scorned. She wanted revenge on the family that had rejected her, so she placed a curse on the ring. It brings death to anyone who sees it, except for the wearer and their beloved. She leaned closer. "But there's a price for that protection." "What price?" I asked. "I think your souls," she said. "I can't be certain. I only know James wasn't himself after he gave Lydia that ring. It changed both of them over time. The night he killed her, his eyes were different. I had seen them myself, empty, like you were staring through a window. Like Jake's eyes now. The old woman told me how to remove the ring. It had to be done on a new moon. There was a mixture I needed to prepare, herbs and oils and other things I won't mention here. The process would be painful, but it was the only way. The next new moon, I prepared everything as I was told. Jake watched with those unfamiliar glassy eyes as I submerged my hand in the mixture. The pain was excruciating. My skin blistered on contact, but it worked. The ring loosened. With one final agonizing pull, I wrenched the ring free. My finger came with it, severed cleanly at the knuckle. Blood poured from the wound, but I felt only relief as the sapphire glowed with rage. Jake lunged for the ring, but I was faster. I dropped it into a cloth bag and tied it with red thread 7 times exactly as instructed. We drove to the old bridge at the edge of town. The bag seemed to get heavier with each mile, and I could swear I heard scratching coming from inside it. At the center of the bridge, we stood in darkness, staring at the black water below. No moon reflected on its surface. "Are you sure?" Jake asked, his voice finally his own again. I nodded, clutching my bandaged hand. "It has to end." He held the bag over the railing. For a moment, it seemed like he couldn't let go, like the bag was stuck to his hand. Then, with visible effort, Jake opened his fingers. The splash below was small. The ripples disappeared quickly. "It's been 3 weeks, no accidents, no deaths. Jake is himself again, though he remembers everything. We both do. When Jake and I drive over that bridge, we both fall silent, staring at the water below. Sometimes I dream of the river bottom, of silt slowly covering the cloth bag, of water flowing endlessly over hidden things. In these dreams, I see fish swimming near the bag, then darting away suddenly. The ring is down there, waiting. Is it truly contained, or simply biding its time? When I wake from these dreams, my missing finger throbs with phantom pain, and I wonder if somewhere in the darkness of the river, a sapphire pulses an answer. I'd like to start off with an apology. If I am correct, I may just have killed you and everyone you know. Hopefully that isn't the case, but if it is, sorry. I've been working as an immunologist for the past 17 years, and I'm quite well known for my work. Throughout my life, I've lost people I cared about to disease. My mother died from tuberculosis when I was 5. My best friend died of leukemia when I was 16, and my father has recently been diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. I've always viewed it as a malicious and evil thing that robs us of our family and friends. It's for this reason that I chose to study the immune system. It's truly a fascinating thing. Our bodies are somehow incredibly resilient and terribly delicate at the same time. My goal was to contribute to the eradication of disease. Well, I suppose the same can be said for all immunologists, but I worked with a fiery hatred for pestilence and sickness. I wanted, in a sense, to get revenge on the being I had made up in my head, this evil figure I had conjured up to personify disease. I was after more than just one. I didn't want to be the man who ended cancer or AIDS. I wanted to rid humanity of the greatest threat it ever had. My goal was to end as many diseases as I possibly could with one strike. I'll keep my explanations as brief as I can. I know you didn't come here for a science lesson. The human immune system is incredibly complex and has a vast array of countermeasures it uses to kill off pathogens. However, this all relies on the first step of the process, recognition. In order for anything to happen, some immune cell needs to come into contact with the foreign body afflicting the host. This can be any number of cells: T cells, B cells, macrophages, dendritic cells, NK cells, the list goes on. Once this happens, receptors on these cells bind to specific surface proteins on the pathogen, which starts the next step of the process. The pathogen is engulfed and digested. Afterwards, the cell takes pieces of this now dead pathogen and brings it to other immune cells to activate more immune responses. After a long list of signaling pathways, the host produces antibodies which bind to the pathogens and flag them for destruction. Later, when one of the many killer cells encounters a pathogen marked by antibodies, it will be swiftly eliminated. This process can apply to all types of diseases: bacterial, viral, even cancers. So why can't we just synthetically make a bunch of antibodies and shoot them into sick people? Well, there are many reasons actually, but one of them is the issue of immune response recognition. When your immune system goes out to kill targeted cells, how does it know which cells are good and which are bad? The answer is a molecule called sialic acid. Your cells produce this on their surfaces so that even if an immune cell binds to them, it can recognize the sialic acid structures on the surface and move on from it. But some diseases, disgusting and vile as they are, have evolved to use this to their advantage. Some of the most dangerous diseases are able to coat themselves in sialic acid in order to evade immune detection. For example, influenza binds to sialic acid on respiratory cells to gain entry into your lungs. Some bacteria like Neisseria meningitidis actually steal sialic acid from their host to create a disguise. And one of the reasons cancer is so difficult to treat is that cancer cells overproduce sialic acid, effectively wearing a do not kill sign that prevents immune cells from recognizing them as threats. This allows all of them to go about their business, killing innocent people and spreading to others. To combat this, humans have developed a treatment, one mainly for cancer, using sialidase, an enzyme that breaks down sialic acid from molecules. Think of this as a chainsaw that cuts off sialic acid and allows the bad cells to be recognized by your immune system. There's only one problem with this: sialidase is not specific. It will rip off sialic acid from your own cells if it comes into contact with them. But in this enzyme, I saw the key to free us all of the burden of sickness. If I could use a vehicle to ensure that sialidase only comes into contact with non-self cells, I would be able to strip away their advantage and expose them to the immune system. And I had the perfect one. It feels strange to condense years of my life and hard work into just a few sentences. In my studies, I became deeply familiar with the measles virus, an endlessly fascinating entity. You see, measles causes infected cells to fuse together, forming massive clumps called syncytia. If I could modify the virus to carry the sialidase enzyme, these clusters would become their own undoing. As the cells fused, sialidase would strip away the sialic acid from all of them at once, leaving them completely exposed to the immune system's wrath. That's exactly what I did. It was tested on rodents a week ago and it worked perfectly. But when I tried to get this new treatment approved, I was shot down almost immediately. I was outraged. I had invented a way to eradicate a plethora of life-threatening diseases, and this miracle cure wasn't even going to be considered. Unfortunately, I took matters into my own hands. This drug was going to save my father, I knew it. So I went to the hospital he was being treated at. He's been spending most of his time sleeping. Cancer has a way of draining energy from its victims. I injected him with my treatment quickly. He didn't even wake up. Satisfied, I left the hospital and headed to the lab. The rats needed feeding, and then I could finally relax at home. Only when I saw the rats did I realize my error. In my fervor to create this miracle cure, I had made the same mistake that the human immune system does. I hadn't been specific enough. My goal was to make make the measles virus, with sialidase attached to it, bind to any foreign bodies and force them to clump together. This would then allow the enzyme to remove the sialic acid from all of the pathogens and allow them all to be recognized by the immune system. But sialidase isn't specific, it had shorn off the protein that causes the measles virus to bind. The result of this was a free-floating virus that could bind to any cell and shear off its sialic acid, making it a target for the host's immune system. The rats in their cages had partially liquefied, their bodies reduced to a putrid gelatinous slurry. Only a few fragments of bone and shredded tissue remained, barely recognizable as what had once been living creatures. A rancid mix of blood and dissolved flesh pooled at the bottom of the cages, the stench thick and suffocating. Without another thought, I rushed back to the hospital, back to my father's room, but it was too late. I'm not sure why, but it acted quickly, far more so than it had with the rats. My dad had woken from his sleep with agonizing screams. Blood ran from every orifice, his eyes, his nose, his ears and mouth. He reached out a semi-solid hand towards me. I could see the veins and muscles through his skin. As he reached out, his hand fell from his arm and splattered onto the floor by my feet. His now milky white eyes rolled into his skull as he fell back into bed, motionless. His torso caved in on itself, exposing his liquefied organs to the open air. His body was eating itself because of what I had done. Nurses and doctors rushed in and out of the room, but I knew they wouldn't be able to help. An older nurse grabbed my arm and led me outside, but I couldn't hear his words. My ears rung from what I had seen, what I had caused. I vomited in the flower bed. I didn't know what else to do, so I went home where I'm now drafting this up. There's one more detail about the measles virus that I didn't mention. It's highly contagious. In fact, in unvaccinated populations, it has a 100% infection rate. Not that a vaccine would help anymore. I've modified the virus to the point where a new vaccine would need to be developed, but judging by how fast it worked on my father, I don't think we have that kind of time. Every single one of the people who were in that hospital likely have it, me included. By tomorrow, hundreds of people will be infected. A week from now, thousands or more. But chances are I'll be dead by then. I truly hope I'm wrong, but if I'm not, I really am sorry. To anyone who finds this message, my name doesn't matter, but my story might. I am, or rather, I was a lead engineer at a top secret research facility deep beneath the ice of Antarctica. Our mission was simple: to explore and harness the power of an ancient technology buried miles below the frozen surface. What we discovered was something that should never have been awakened. The project, known as Obsidian, a codename we now know was more fitting than we ever realized, began with the discovery of a massive, perfectly preserved structure detected via satellite scans. This structure, buried under 4 miles of solid ice, was unlike anything on Earth, an impossibly smooth obsidian black pyramid emitting faint electromagnetic pulses. In December 2021, my team was dispatched to the site with cutting-edge drilling equipment to breach the ice and gain access. The project was classified at the highest levels of global security. Only a handful of people even knew it existed. As we tunneled closer, the pulses grew stronger, and our instruments started behaving erratically. Computers failed, compasses spun wildly, and even our most advanced communication systems flickered and died. On January 10th, 2022, we finally reached the pyramid's surface. The surrounding ice had an unnatural, almost glossy sheen, and the air grew thick with static electricity. Ignoring every instinct, we set up our equipment and prepared to enter. The entrance was sealed with a door made from a material that defied all analysis, neither metal nor stone. It absorbed all light, rendering it nearly invisible to the naked eye. When we finally breached it, we found an empty chamber lined with glyphs that emitted a dim, pulsating glow. At the center of the room stood a large, perfectly circular hole descending into darkness. It was around this point that things began to spiral out of control. Without warning, the glyphs started to pulse faster, and an oppressive force filled the chamber, pressing down on us as if the air itself had turned to lead. We attempted to retreat, but the hole began to emit a low thrumming noise, a sound that resonated deep within our bones. As we watched, paralyzed with terror, something began to rise from the depths. A shape of a void darker than the darkest night emerged from the hole. It was amorphous, shifting, and yet there was a terrifying sense of intelligence behind it. It filled the room with an overwhelming presence, a crushing sense of despair and doom. The surrounding air warped and twisted as the entity began to take a vaguely humanoid form. We couldn't move, couldn't speak. The only sound was the relentless hum, growing louder and more unbearable with each passing second. Then, in a voice that bypassed our ears and spoke directly into our minds, it said, "You have trespassed into the domain of the eternal void. You are the first to awaken us in eons, and for this your world will suffer. We are the ones who came before, and we shall reclaim what was lost. You cannot stop what has begun." The entity dissipated into the air, leaving us with a chilling coldness that seeped into our very souls. We fled, abandoning all equipment and sealing the entrance behind us, but it was too late. The pyramid began to emit pulses of energy at an ever-increasing rate, and we realized with dawning horror that it was a beacon, a call to something far beyond our comprehension. As I write this, I am the last surviving member of my team. The others are gone, vanished without a trace, consumed by whatever we unleashed. The facility is on lockdown, but I fear it's only a matter of time before the energy pulses reach their peak and whatever lies on the other side answers the call. I don't know how much longer I have, but you need to understand, this isn't just a threat to us, but to all of humanity. Do not attempt to access the Obsidian pyramid. Do not go near it. Know that the end we have set in motion cannot be undone. If you receive this, pray that it's not too late. I barged through my front door and sprinted up the stairs. I made a run for the bedroom door before kicking it open. "I know he's in here. Where are you hiding him this time?" I screamed. My wife Susan was shocked to see me back from work and was sitting in bed reading a book. "I don't know what you are talking about, honey. I've been here all morning." I could tell from the red glow on my wife's cheeks and the beads of sweat rolling down her forehead she was doing more than reading a book. "I know that scumbag is here. I can still smell his stinking aftershave." I grabbed the blankets and ripped them off the bed. Susan tried her best to cover her naked body. "It's 2 in the afternoon. Why are you in bed naked?" Susan looked like a rabbit caught in a headlight. She stuttered as her brain tried to make up a plausible answer. I began tearing the room apart when suddenly I heard the sound of labored breathing coming from the closet. I felt a rage of red mist descend upon me before whipping open the closet doors. As I drove back to work, I couldn't get the image of Mason Bradley and his fat gut on top of my wife. Intrusive thoughts about my wife's infidelities permeated my mind as I drove my truck. At 37, my life wasn't where I expected it to be. My dreams of running my own company were as broken as the beat-up pickup truck I used to drive to work. My truck rumbled up to the gates of the steel mill. The security guard at the gate barely acknowledged my existence as the truck roared past him. As I turned into the car park, I noticed my boss Big Ed waiting for me. As I got out of my truck, Big Ed came scurrying over. For a man who ran a $1 million company, he always looked as if he was out panhandling for his next meal. His slacks were 2 sizes too big and he wore the same t-shirt every day. "What are you doing tomorrow, Jack?" I hated how Big Ed spoke to me. He had a habit of spitting after every sentence and would sometimes spit directly at me. "I was going to surprise my wife tomorrow and take her somewhere nice." Big Ed hitched his slacks up onto his gut. "Listen here now, Jack. My car's been giving me some trouble and I need you to service her. Couldn't you get someone else to do it?" I could tell he was getting annoyed with my attitude. "If you want your job Monday, you will do what you're told." He had me over a barrel and knew I couldn't afford to lose the only job the town had to offer. "I'll be over first thing in the morning." I arrived at Ed's dilapidated mansion. Ed was outside with his car swooning over her like it was some beautiful young woman. His face lit up as he ran his hands over the bonnet of the truck. "Be gentle with her, she's all I got," said Ed. Ed looked slightly smarter than his usual unkempt manner. "You got a date, Ed?" "When the cats are away, the mice will play," said Ed as he gave me a mischievous wink. Ed pulled a red handkerchief from his back pocket and wiped the sweat from his forehead. "I see one scratch on her and I will snap your neck." I was weary from a long day babysitting Ed's car. All I wanted to do was throw my feet up and have a nice cold beer. I stepped in my front door and was suddenly hit by a familiar smell. It smelt like Big Ed's nasty cologne, but I was too tired to take much notice. My body ached as I grabbed a beer from the kitchen before collapsing onto my chair. As I sat there, sipping beer and reevaluating my life's predicament, predicaments, I noticed something sticking from the armrest of my couch. I walked over and picked up the red piece of cloth, the same red piece of cloth Big Ed used to wipe the beady sweat from his grubby forehead. I unfolded the cloth, and to my dismay, there was Ed's name embroidered in the hanky. I was heartbroken and furious. I knew what it meant, and all I wanted to do was tear the house down with my bare hands, but I knew better than to let my anger get the best of me. My eyes welled up as I sped down the country road. I turned the radio up full blast to drown out my intrusive thoughts. I was too embroiled in a battle with my conciseness to notice the dark figure walking in the middle of the road. By the time I noticed it was too late, I slammed on the brakes and covered my eyes before the car came to a halt. To my relief, I couldn't find any signs of someone injured. I convinced myself stress was making me go crazy. As I tried jumping back in my truck, I heard someone approaching from behind. Having trouble, buddy? I felt a cold chill up my spine. Something was telling me to run, but my legs had turned to jelly from fear. A dark figure stepped out from the shadows of the looming trees overhead. I thought I had hit someone with my truck, I nervously explained. I couldn't make out who I was talking to. All I could see was an outline of a tall, dark figure. I hear you're having trouble with your wife. Do I know you? I nervously asked. Suddenly, the dark figure came into focus, revealing an old man. He took something from his pocket before handing it to me. I couldn't believe my eyes. It was Big Ed's red handkerchief. How did you... I began stuttering. What is it you desire? Asked the old man. Suddenly, a strange feeling swept over me. A feeling of intense euphoria crept up from my toes, flooding my brain. I wished every man who sleeps with my wife would get sick and die a slow, painful death. The words seemed to come out of my mouth as if someone else was saying. Suddenly, everything began to spin, and before I knew it, I was back in my truck. I reluctantly drove into work after spending a night in a dingy motel. All I wanted to do was punch Big Ed in his fat face, but with my marriage on the rocks, I knew I couldn't afford it. When I arrived, I was surprised to see Mason Bradley wasn't at his station. I didn't give it much thought until I saw Big Ed coming from the bathroom, looking like death warmed up. Hey Ed, you don't look so good. Ed stood there looking pale as a ghost, trying to keep the contents of his stomach from ejecting from his mouth. I think it was something I ate, he explained as I took a step back from him. Has this anything to do with Bradley being out? I asked. Yeah, he was too sick to make it in today. Must be a bug doing the rounds. Over the next few days, I watched Big Ed get weaker until there was no sign of him. I had gotten word that Mason Bradley had died, and from what I was told, Big Ed wasn't far behind. Since Big Ed wasn't in, we knocked off early. As I drove home, I stopped at the local gas station to pick up some beers. Phil, the owner, was at the counter looking like he was about to pass out. You alright, Phil? You're looking a bit pale there, buddy. Phil covered his mouth, trying his best not to puke all over the counter. I'm after picking up this bug that's going around. It couldn't be, I thought to myself as I suddenly remembered the strange encounter I had the other night, the one I was sure was just a strange dream. You look after yourself, Phil, and get yourself to a doctor. Will you give my love to that beautiful wife of yours and tell her I'll drop over her magazines once I feel better, said Phil before dashing for the bathroom. As I drove into my driveway, I noticed Mrs. Stevens standing outside her house looking distraught. What's wrong, Anne? I asked. It's Mike. They took him to the hospital. Who took him? Mr. Stevens was too distraught to get her words out. Men in hazmat suits. I felt the familiar feeling of despair rise from the pit of my stomach. Who else got sick? Bob, Tony from across the road, the guy who delivers the milk. They're dropping like flies. Days went by and news of men getting sick and dying all over town continued to trickle in. Suddenly, I was hit with the realization that the man I met a few weeks ago wasn't a figment of my imagination. I wrestled with the guilt of everyone dying and the heartbreak of my wife's infidelity. I didn't want people dying, and if this was my fault, I needed to fix it. I got in my truck and began driving the same road as before. I was overwhelmed with the thoughts of people dying and the guilt and grief it brought with it. As I drove, I suddenly spotted the old man sitting by the roadside. I slammed on the brakes and jumped from my truck. I ran to the old man before dropping to my knees. Please, I beg you, whatever you have done, you need to take it back. The old man gave me a confused look. But it was what you desired. Why would you want to take it back? I was upset, but I didn't want people to die. Please, it's not what I desire, I cried. The old man put his hand on my shoulder. What is it you truly desire? All I want is my wife to love me and only me, I begged. Suddenly, I was overcome with that same feeling of euphoria. My world began to spin before I was suddenly back in my truck and the old man was nowhere to be seen. As I walked in my front door, Susan was standing there waiting for me. She had a look on her face I'd never seen before. She ran and threw her arms around me before kissing me passionately. I love you so much, Jack. Can you please forgive me? Of course I forgive you, I always do. My wife's face lit up, and for the first time, I could feel a genuine sense of love from her, a feeling I always desired. From now on, you're the only man I want and need, she said as she led me upstairs to the bedroom. That night we made passionate love as if we were the only two people that existed in the world. After we finished, we spent the rest of the night cuddling and planning for a better future together. The following morning I woke with a splitting headache. As the days followed, I was stuck to the toilet puking my guts up. As I got weaker, the terrifying realization of the first wish hit me like a ton of bricks. I write this as I'm in the final throes of death as a warning to others. Be careful what you wish for. I've worked prison security my entire life. A few months ago, I got a promotion, great pay, full accommodations, and one simple assignment: monitor the facility's camera system. No questions asked. I was told the prison and its inhabitants were classified, even to me. The pay was too good, the on-site housing was free, and I had a family to support, so I didn't ask. Now alarms are blaring all around me, and I don't know what I just saw, but I can't keep it classified. I have reviewed the footage for the 5th time, my hands trembling as I paused it on the prison's head of security, Harris, and his panicked face. The alarms and flashing red lights of the control room filled the screen, disorienting even as a mere observer. Ah, crap, Harris's voice cracked through the audio feed. The camera zoomed in slightly on the screen he was staring at. The prison cell layout, a grid of green icons, had one glaring anomaly. A single cell on floor 4 in the far corner flashed an angry red. Unauthorized release blinked relentlessly in tandem with the deafening alarms. He grabbed the desk phone next to him with a speed that spoke to both his training and his fear. All units to containment floor now. His voice boomed over the speakers. We have a breach. Repeat, we have a breach in cell 4 corner. Code black. Code black. The words reverberated in my mind, the first in the facility's history. Harris didn't have time to dwell on the weight of it, and neither did I. I fast-forwarded the footage, watching guards scramble into action, weapons drawn, their postures rigid with tension. The control room camera shook slightly as Harris grabbed his rifle, slammed in a fresh magazine, and chambered a round. He was preparing to join them when gunfire erupted through the audio feed. I rewound and replayed that moment, trying to pinpoint the exact second the chaos began. The reinforced glass gave me a clear view of the containment wing as muzzle flashes illuminated the hallway below. I could see the flash of gunfire, but not the target. As fast as it began, it was over. Harris's movements faltered. His battle-hardened composure cracked as a low, guttural noise filtered through the intercom, something between a growl and a laugh. I shivered even behind my screen. Harris stepped out of the control room, entering the pitch-black hallway. The rotating red lights painted his shadow in a macabre dance across the walls. Guards rushed past him, forming a defensive line, their voices barely audible over the alarms. "With you, sir. What are your orders?" one shouted. I watched Harris take a breath, his hand tightening on his rifle. "Safety's off. Shoot to kill." His voice carried a forced confidence, but the trembling of his fingers told a different story. They moved forward deeper into the containment wing. I switched to another camera angle, tracking their progress. The cells lining the walls seemed to come alive with the sounds of screaming, laughing, and pounding as the other prisoners reacted to whatever had been unleashed. They rounded the corner and my breath hitched. The camera captured the massive steel-reinforced door to cell 4 corner, now twisted and dangling from a single hinge. A jagged gash split its surface, revealing the core beneath. One of the guards whispered, "What in the world could do that?" I'd asked myself the same question. Harris stepped forward, slipping on something. The camera zoomed in on the dark puddle beneath his boots. He crouched, touched it, then brought his fingers to his nose. Even without being there, I could almost smell the metallic tang of blood as Harris recoiled. He activated his flashlight, aiming it into the cell. The beam revealed carnage that made me pause the video, bile rising in my throat. Blood coated the walls, limbs and chunks of flesh strewn across the floor. The stench of iron seemed to seep through the screen. One of the guards let out a dry heave, but it was Harris's reaction that haunted me the most. He gagged, visibly shaken, his usual stoic demeanor cracking at the scene around him. The footage jumped as he spun, rifle aimed at a hand taking a weak grip on his ankle. One of his men lay on the floor, torso intact but legs gone, intestines strung along the floor behind him. The man's voice crackled through the audio. Behind you. Harris turned, the other guards following his lead. The camera angle shifted to capture what they saw. My blood ran cold, a child, or something resembling one. It clung to the wall like an arachnid, limbs contorted, black eyes hollow and lifeless. Its mouth twisted into a grin that stretched impossibly wide, revealing rows of needle-like teeth. I froze the frame, staring at the monstrous visage. It didn't move until Harris did, his voice a choked whisper. What in the fu— The creature screeched, the sound shrill and inhuman before lunging. The room erupted into chaos. The guards opened fire, their muzzle flashes briefly illuminating the scene. Screams filled the audio feed, cutting off one by one until only static and the distant wail of alarms remained. The camera feed from the hallway flickered. When it stabilized, the scene was eerily quiet. Blood dripped from the walls and pooled on the floor. Then came the sound, a slow, deliberate scrape, thud, scrape, thud. The creature emerged, dragging Harris's lifeless body behind it. His blood painted a crimson trail on the cold steel floor like a signature written of gore. It approached the far wall where a sealed door stood. I rewound and played that segment repeatedly, unable to look away as the creature raised Harris by his matted hair. His head lolled and a weak cough escaped his lips, blood splattering the wall. He was still alive. The door scanner activated with a mechanical ping, a red laser trying to scan his face. Harris's final cry sent shivers down my spine. No, he said as he tried to keep his eyes sealed tightly. Jagged fingers slithered along his forehead and curled under his eyelids, prying them open, forcing the scanner to accept his retina. Blood and tears flowed down his face as he screamed. The door unlocked with a hiss of decompressed air, large locks unlatching with a clang. The creature discarded Harris with a sickening thud, his head colliding with the wall. I had to stop the footage as his skull gave way, blood and brain spraying the lens, but I forced myself to finish it. The last moments showed the creature crawling through the now open door, slick with gore, leaving behind a facility drowning in silence and death, its demented form slowly morphing into that of an innocent child. I sat back, the weight of what I'd seen pressing down on me. My hands hovered over the keyboard, unsure of what to type or who to send this to. There were no protocols for this, no contingency plans for whatever it was. All I could think was, it's free. It looks like a child. It is out there amongst all of us. This is my only warning to you all. I will get thrown in prison for posting this, but it doesn't matter. I'll be safer in there than free with that thing out there. God save us all. I don't know if I should be posting this, but screw it. It's been over 20 years, and no one ever believed me anyway. Maybe someone out there can explain what I saw that night. Back in 2003, I worked security at a government-funded research site. Not gonna say where, but let's just say it was out in the middle of nowhere, far enough that if something went wrong, no one would hear the screams. The facility was a fortress. Barbed wire, keycard access everywhere, armed patrols at night. Most of the time it was boring. Scientists came in, scientists left, and we were just there to make sure nobody messed with their work. But there was one project that always gave me the creeps. They called it Project Chimera. Even the other guards didn't know much about it, just that it involved biological stuff and that the scientists working on it never looked well rested. It was a quiet night shift. I was doing my usual rounds, walking the perimeter of the high security labs. Then my radio crackled. Containment breach in Lab 3, non-human interference. I remember thinking, what the hell does that mean? It wasn't unauthorized personnel, it wasn't security risk, it was non-human. I ran toward Lab 3 and when I got there, I saw two scientists standing outside looking absolutely terrified. Through the glass observation window I saw it, a deer. A stupid deer was standing inside the secure laboratory, right in the middle of all their high-tech equipment, its hooves tapping against the floor. It looked wrong. Not sick, not injured, just wrong. Its movements were jerky, its breathing was too slow. Its eyes were milky white, and I swear to God, for a second, I thought it was looking directly at me. One of the scientists, Dr. Nakamura, I think, was practically hyperventilating. She kept muttering something like, "It's interacting with the Matrix. This wasn't supposed to happen." Then the lights flickered, and everything went to hell. There was this low humming noise, like a power station warming up, but deeper, more alive. The air felt thick, like walking through syrup. The deer just stood there, its body twitching slightly and the machines around it started sparking. Then, for a split second, it wasn't a deer anymore. I don't know how to explain it. It was still there, but its shape was warping, like it was being pulled apart and put back together at the same time. I could see other things inside it, patterns, shapes that didn't belong in a living creature. The scientists were screaming at each other, trying to shut the system down. I grabbed my radio and yelled, "We have a serious problem in Lab 3. But the second I said that, the deer snapped its head toward me so fast I heard its neck crack. And then it was gone. No explosion, no dramatic escape, just gone, like someone had flicked a switch and erased it from reality. The humming stopped, the machines went dead, the air felt normal again. They shut down the lab immediately. The higher-ups came in the next morning, cleared everything out, and told us not to ask questions. I overheard one of the researchers whispering that they found something left behind where the deer had been standing. A residue, some kind of organic material that didn't match anything they had on record, but no one ever explained what happened to the deer. They told us it was a security failure, that the deer had somehow wandered in through a ventilation shaft, which was bullcrap because I had walked that perimeter for months and there was no way a full-grown deer made it past all that security. A few weeks later, Project Chimera was shut down completely. The lab was sealed off and the lead researchers were reassigned or just disappeared. I put in my resignation not long after, but sometimes I still dream about that night, about the way the air felt wrong, about the deer's eyes, milky white, staring straight through me, and the way for just a second I swear it knew what I was thinking. The teacher knew from the look on my face I had forgotten my homework again. "What's your excuse this time, Toby?" she asked. "I'm sorry, miss. I left it on the kitchen table. I'll have it tomorrow, I promise." She had heard it many times before. It was the same old song and dance, and no matter what I said, it didn't stop me from getting detention. When I got home, my mother was waiting for me. The school had already phoned her, and I knew by the look on her face I was in big trouble. This is the third time this month the school rang me. "I'm sorry, Mom. I did leave my homework at home. Miss Henchley's just out to get me. She sent me to my room after she told me I was grounded for the week. I hated being grounded because all I had was my sister Cindy to talk to. Mrs. Henchley gave me detention again. I hate her. I wish somebody would teach her a lesson," I explained to Cindy. Cindy looked at me with a big smile on her face. "I can ask my friend to help you. Millie is great and does everything I ask her to do." My sister was annoying, but I found it cute that she had an imaginary friend. Later, I was jolted from my sleep, and Cindy was sitting by the dressing table with her back turned to me. "Get back to bed, Cindy. It's late. If Mom finds you out of bed, I'll get in trouble." I hated sharing a room with my sister who slept on the top bunk. When my dad died, we had to move to a smaller house. My mom said it was temporary, but it's been 2 years now, and I am still stuck in a tiny room with her. When I woke the following morning, my sister was already downstairs. I walked over to the dresser and picked up a drawing my sister must have drawn. My sister's drawings were usually cute. She likes unicorns and fairies, but this one was disturbing. It depicted a woman lying on the floor next to a busted up car, and she had red stuff coming from her head. I arrived at school that day to find Miss Henchley wasn't behind her desk. Instead, we had a substitute teacher who told us she was filling in after Miss Henchley was involved in a terrible car accident. It was then I remembered the picture Cindy had drawn. It was just a coincidence, I was sure of it, but I couldn't help feeling guilty. Either way, I wished this on her. The only upside to Miss Henley's accident was not having to do detention and go home. On the way home, I bumped into Damian Morsley. He was on my case all year, and every time he saw me, he gave me a beating, and this time was no different. When I got home all bloody and bruised, I went straight to my room. I didn't want my mother to make a big deal about it. I didn't want to give Damian more reason to hate me. "What happened to you?" my sister asked as she stepped into the room. "Nothing happened to me," I said as I scolded my sister for asking too many questions. "Was it that mean kid Damian again?" she asked in a concerned tone. "Yes, but you can't say anything to Mom. She will go ballistic." My sister looked at me again with that mischievous smile. "Don't worry, Millie will fix him." The next morning, I woke to find another drawing left on the dresser. This picture was even more disturbing than the last. It showed a kid lying on the floor with what appeared to be a knife sticking from his stomach and a man standing over him. For the first time, I was hoping Damian was in class, but there was no sign of him. As the day went on, rumors started spreading that Damian's father was arrested for doing something terrible to him. On the way home, I decided to take a detour past his house. I was shocked to find his house surrounded by police tape and people in white suits in the garden. A kid on a bike was standing across from the house, and when I asked him what happened, he confirmed my biggest fear, that Damien was murdered by his father. It couldn't be. I refused to believe it, but it happening twice was too much of a coincidence. I ran home and called Cindy up to the bedroom. Cindy, you need to stop this imaginary friend business. I don't know how you're doing it, but people are getting hurt, I shouted. I could see the tears well up in her eyes. But Millie's real, she is not imaginary. You wait and see, she said as she broke down crying before running out of the room. That night, I fell asleep feeling guilty about shouting at my sister. I tossed and turned from a restless sleep before I was jolted awake. My sister was sitting at the dresser again, so I shouted at her to get back into bed, but she ignored me and kept on drawing. Who are you talking to? Said a voice from above me. Startled, I turned to see my sister still in her bed, but when I turned back, the girl at the dressing table was gone. I walk over to the dresser only to find another drawing. I picked it up and a feeling of dread crept up my spine as I looked at the drawing. It was a picture of someone impaled on spikes with blood pouring from them at the bottom of a canyon. I feel the blood drain from my body. Tomorrow is our annual school trip to the Grand Canyon. He was only gone for 2 days, said he needed to clear his head, so he packed light and headed up into the Wintas with his usual gear. No big deal, he's done it before, but this time when he came back, something was off. It started with how he walked in. No announcement, no I'm back. Just opened the door, set his pack down, and stood in the kitchen like he forgot what it was for. I was at the table mid-bite. He looked at me and smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Good trip? I asked. He nodded, still smiling. That smile didn't drop once the whole night. Not when he told me about the mountain lion tracks near his campsite. Not when I noticed he was wearing my sweatshirt, the one he hates. Not even when I asked what trail he took and he said, North Ridge. There is no North Ridge, not here. That night I couldn't sleep. Something about how he moved felt wrong. Too smooth, too studied. At one point I got up to check the locks and caught a glimpse of him in the hallway mirror. He was just standing in the dark, staring at it. Not at his reflection, at the space beside it. The next morning I found a dead bird on the porch. Not torn apart, just laid out neatly like a gift. He said he didn't put it there, then he asked if I remembered when our mom died. The thing is, she's still alive. I waited until he went out back. He said he wanted to feel the sun, but just stood in the middle of the yard, arms hanging loosely at his sides, face tilted upward like he was trying to remember what warmth felt like. That gave me maybe 10 minutes. I went straight for his pack. It looked normal at first. His knife, half-used water bladder, trail snacks he didn't touch. But when I unzipped the bottom pouch, I found something he would have never brought home. A lock of hair, tied with red thread, dry, brittle. Not his color, not mine. It looked old, like it had been buried in salt or ash. Underneath it was a scrap of parchment. Something drawn in charcoal, rough circles layered with jagged lines. Stick figures warped around a central shape. I didn't recognize the symbol, but the longer I stared, the more I felt like I should. When I turned it over, a single word was scrawled in the corner in tiny, frantic handwriting: return. I barely had time to zip the pack shut before I heard the back door open. He stepped inside, eyes still fixed on the ceiling like something might be living just above it. You been in my bag? He asked calmly. I lied, said number. He smiled, that smile. It stayed frozen while he poured himself a glass of water, gulped it down too fast, then poured another. His throat made no sound as he swallowed. Later that night, I woke up to him humming a song we used to sing when we were little. Only half the melody was wrong. Notes bent in places they shouldn't bend. The words didn't rhyme anymore. And when I peeked down the hallway, I saw him standing at my bedroom door, back turned and not moving, just listening. He didn't say anything when I asked what he was doing. He just walked away. In the morning, he was already at the kitchen table when I got up. No coffee, just sitting. He looked at me with that too wide smile and said, "Why'd you lie, little brother?" He asked why I lied. I didn't answer. I just stood there, heartbeat hammering behind my ribs, wondering how long he'd known, if he saw me touch the pack, if he'd ever really turned his back at all. He didn't press the question, just smiled and went back to staring at the table. Later he left again. No word, no jacket, just walked out into the tree line and vanished like he'd always belonged there. This time I didn't check the pack. I waited, and after midnight he came back. His hands were covered in dirt, shirt torn, no blood, just wrong, like it wasn't made for his body anymore, like his limbs had started to stretch beneath the seams. He didn't say anything, just walked past me and went straight to the basement. That's when I heard it, knocking, but not from the door, from inside the pack, slow, wet, rhythmic, like knuckles dragging against plastic. I opened it. The first thing I saw was the hair again, again. Matted now, damp with something dark. Beneath it, something wrapped in a tattered gray cloth. I should have stopped there. I didn't. I reached in and pulled it free. It was a jar, sealed with wax and twine. Inside was a mouth, not a full face, just a mouth twisted in a silent scream. Gums torn back, lips stitched closed with animal sinew. But it was breathing. The glass fogged up every few seconds. It was trying to speak. Then I realized something. It looked like mine. I dropped it. The jar didn't break. It just rolled to the edge of the floor and sat there, vibrating softly. Then from the basement his voice called up. Except it wasn't really his, it was mine. Low, hollow, almost like he was trying it on for the first time. "Why'd you go through my things, little brother?" I didn't answer. I was too busy watching the jar. It was smiling now.
If you enjoyed these stories, please consider subscribing and liking this video. Let me know your thoughts of these stories in the comments below. I frequently talk to my viewers there. But anyways, I hope you were creeped out.
Just kidding. Stay safe.